What's up, guys? Welcome to the show.
How are we doing today?
Good. I'm George Gill, and I have Jose Magaña here with us.
Yes, Jose Bautista, the one and only.
Oh, I'm sorry. Am I calling you by the wrong last name?
Maybe. I mean, I go by both. I mean,
Okay.
my parents gave me a really long name. So a few people know me by a few different names, but Jose Bautista is the one that's most known in the real estate. So
In the real estate world?
We'll keep it with that.
And what about the nickname?
Well, I have like 30 of them, but
Yeah.
we'll keep it with Jose.
Yeah, I actually met you by your nickname, and until you started working with us, I didn't know you by anything else. And now it's actually kind of weird when I hear you go by your nickname.
So anyone watching that knows me by Chucho, what's up?
Chucho, yes, we got Chucho in the house. All right, what's up, man? So why don't we start by you introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about who you are and your background and all that fun stuff.
So my name's Jose. I grew up here in the East Haven area, right where our office is. Literally like 2 minutes down the road is where I live. I grew up here. Most of my friends are here. A lot of friends in New York City, Fairfield County, but mostly out here in New Haven County. I've been in real estate now. Just hit the 1 year mark with you guys.
That's true. This week.
Yeah, this week. It was
a couple days ago.
Hit the 1 year mark. Loving it so far. Glad I'm doing this.
Awesome. Well, we're happy to have you, and I'm happy to have you on the podcast now too. I've been trying to get you on for a while, so I'm glad that you finally made the decision.
Definitely hard to get.
Yeah, you are. Tell you. A little bit. So before we started recording, we touched up on what we wanted to talk about. So before we get to that, I want to kind of just add some context in terms of what the basis for that conversation is going to be, right? Recently on our calls, and I think a couple of times either on the podcast or on the key takeaways, we talked about the increase in property valuations in New Haven, right? And like most towns, New Haven undergoes a revaluation every 5 years, I believe. And last year, the revaluation came in at 36% higher than last revaluation, which was back in 2016. So a 36% jump in valuation likely means an increase in property taxes for our New Haven owners, right? And I wrote a newsletter about what that means for property owners, and that perhaps maybe they would be concerned around, well, if my property taxes go up, does that mean my values are going to go down? Should I be planning some moves or whatnot? And the overall consensus on my part is that New Haven's best days are ahead of us, and there are a variety of things that I feel have actually driven the property values up. And we can touch up on the influx of out-of-state investors and the expansion of universities and pharmaceutical companies and all that stuff that I think is just showing that New Haven is a vibrant city. And your takeaway from that was that there are a lot of things that are happening, new things, trending things that are happening in New Haven that could be contributing to that. So now that I've set the premise and the context, why don't we talk a little bit about what your takeaway is in terms of what you feel is driving that expansion and that newfound interest in New Haven?
So something that I feel is playing a big part of this is how expensive New York City and the outskirts of New York City is getting. I've met a lot of people downtown on my nights out and a few clients that moved here from New York City because they see New Haven as being affordable and cheap. Mm-hmm. When people living here don't necessarily agree with that.
Right, it's all relative.
Yeah, it's all relative, exactly. So coming from where they're at, $1,400 gets them a 1-bedroom studio, right? $1,400 here in New Haven is going to get you at least a 2-bedroom.
Yeah.
So they do see a huge quality of life difference with the money they're spending, and they're still able to commute to New York. And a lot of these people are still working with those companies, but remotely. Maybe they have to go in once a week to the office.
Yeah.
So being in the city isn't necessarily a must. They don't have to do it anymore.
Right.
So that is definitely creating an issue with rents as well, going up in the area. So I've met a lot of people recently that are trying to get their first apartments, but it's just not what it was 5, 6, 7 years ago. Yeah. How easy it was to get an apartment around here.
Right. Yeah, no, actually, before we move on, the thing that you just mentioned about location is actually, I think, one of the top things that I think is often overlooked. The fact that New Haven is located between New Haven and Boston, between New York and Boston, is, I think, one of the reasons not just is attracting new residents, but I think is also attracting a lot of companies. Like, for example, we mentioned at the beginning of the show, the expansion of pharmaceutical companies and universities and whatnot. I mean, Yale obviously has a big footprint in New Haven, and I think that that has a lot to do with it. But also, there are a lot of expansions as it relates to hospitals and pharmaceutical companies and research companies that are coming to New Haven. I think partly because of its location, and it's a very convenient geographic location, right? And so it's interesting that you mentioned that, because from a resident standpoint, it is very feasible for you to be able to commute, whether it be Boston or New York, relatively easy, I should say, right? Especially if you are weighing the cost savings when it comes to housing in New York City or Boston versus New Haven, right?
Yep, yep. So there's been a saying I've heard plenty of times people say that New Haven is the greatest small city in America. And recently I read an article that has it as Connecticut being ranked, New Haven being ranked number fourth in the most affordable, trendy cities in America. The only other ones ahead of it were Philly, New Orleans, and at number one,
I think it was Savannah.
Savannah, Georgia, was number one on that list. And it does make sense, especially since New Haven does get a lot of its influence, trends, etc. from New York City. Being
Yeah.
so close to it, we are some of the first ones to see what's happening in the city and kind of mimic it in our own ways down here.
Yeah, no, that's interesting too. I mean, and we talked about so the what you touched up on earlier on the difficulty of tenants being able to get apartments right now in New York or in the big cities, right? And right now, I think one of the interesting things that kind of related to that is the increase in the amount of developments that are happening in New Haven. I mean, every few months we hear about a new building going up, a new building being proposed, and we're talking about high-end luxury buildings, right? And give it several months after the completion, and actually, I should take that back. Even before completion, there's already a waiting list, and occupancy rate is already up in the 80% to 90% range, right? And so the demand is certainly there, and so it could have to do. I mean, it certainly has to do with the increase in rental rates in New Haven, but compare that to the housing crunch that exists in larger cities like New York and Boston. New Haven is a better alternative, and I think that that's probably not going to be slowing down anytime soon, because I think that all those advantages are not only being seen by residents, but it's being seen by big time investors, and they're saying, where am I gonna park my money, and where am I gonna invest in large type of developments? And New Haven is on their radar.
Yep, no, for sure. One of my clients now, he's from the city, from the Great Neck area, and he's been buying a lot of stuff in New Haven and Waterbury. Waterbury, surprisingly, is starting to get a lot of investors picking up the multifamilies in the area.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's only a matter of time, and I've seen this even in just the last 10 years. When I first started working in real estate, there were a few high-end luxury buildings in New Haven area. 360 State Street obviously was the first one. Followed by, I would want to say, Winchester Lofts, and then I think I don't know if it was the Union or Corsair that followed after that, but now I've lost track of how many high-end, full service leasing communities there are, and there's no shortage of people lining up to actually rent these. And so it's super, super interesting. And obviously I touched up on that in the newsletter, and I've been talking more about this with our managed owners, our investors that we manage for. And I've said the same thing. I said, listen, I think that there are too many benefits right now with investing in New Haven, that regardless of what happens this year in terms of increase in interest rates, maybe a little bit more inventory popping up, we're not going to see a complete reversal or any type of loss in terms of equity gains, just simply because of how lucrative it is long term for these investors with big pockets, right?
No, for sure. Yeah, New Haven's definitely up and coming. I wouldn't even say up and coming, because New Haven is an established city, especially having Yale Hospital, Yale University. A lot of people do come into New Haven just for those reasons.
Yeah, from the shoreline. From I actually, yeah, that's a good point. There's a lot of restaurants and stuff that are newer, and people come on from all over the state. Even at some point, they might not become frequently,
And
but
especially having Yale there, you're starting to see a lot of different type of restaurants pop up. There's a lot of Asian cuisine that's popping up, but like not just like your typical Chinese food or like your hot pot type of stuff, but like there's like an egg restaurant I just saw right in front of near Jack's Steakhouse. They do like different types of eggs.
Just eggs.
Like yeah,
Okay, I haven't
corn
seen that.
dogs, hot dogs. Well, like it's like eggs is like their main thing. I haven't checked it out yet, but it's on my
Interesting
list.
blend.
It's definitely an interesting blend. But yeah, definitely have to check that out.
It works for New Haven, I guess. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. And you know, aside from like the economics of it, I also think that there is a cultural progression that has happened in New Haven. I remember, and not just from like the cuisine aspect or whatnot, but also just in terms of the vibe. New Haven used to be very much like the typical, stereotypical college town, right? And a lot of the businesses in the downtown area were around that. There were a lot of clubs, nightclubs, bars, and whatnot.
I missed that.
And I know that you were part. And actually, you're very young. I actually forget how much younger
25.
you are than I am. But when I was your age and younger, and for my friends from high school who are listening to this, they can vouch for me that we were there every weekend at places like Black Bear and Wicked Wolf and. I think before that it was Playwright or Russian
I think
Lady.
those places have been out of business longer than I've been allowed to drink.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. Yeah, way to date me, but but all we've come away from that, and it's more so now like the loungy vibes and the cuisine vibes and the cultural stuff, and I think that has allowed more people from around the state to come into New Haven, which obviously is a good thing for the economics part of it, which probably is fueling a lot of the developments and a lot of people migrating to New Haven and New Haven areas. So it's interesting what has happened in a relatively short period of time. So I guess all things considered, it's not that surprising that it would make a list like that.
I'm happy that it did make that list. But something that does concern me with that is what's gonna happen to the people who can't afford to be in New Haven anymore. Because I've had a lot of, for example, FHA buyers that are under like that 200,000 mark, 220 mark, and it's just really difficult to be able to find anything that's within 10, 15 minutes of New Haven.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's something that we talk a lot on our calls, one-on-ones, in the office. That is a very real challenge and almost like what is that expression? A double-edged sword or a double-edged dagger? But in that, it's great that real estate is doing as well as it is, right? But then, what's the trade-off? We have people trying to enter the market for the first time at astronomically high prices that have increased in a relatively short period of time. Where does that leave them, right? So it's certainly tough, and it's certainly something that we have been figuring out together how to kind of work around.
And hopefully the city does figure out sooner than later, because I do love all the new buildings popping up for like these higher end leases, but I would like to see a little bit more of like the affordable housing being mixed in as well. Because a lot of these places, they're a stone throw away, and you're in a whole different neighborhood, and a whole different tax bracket.
Yeah, that's how.
So
yeah,
like
New
there
Haven is
has to be
definitely that.
something done there where you're not pushing out what makes New Haven New Haven.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Awesome. Anything else you wanted to touch up on?
No, I mean, actually, what was on my mind right now is New Haven. I mean, New Haven's always on my mind. I love New Haven.
Yeah.
I'm definitely a city boy realtor. Nah, miss me with the whole Litchfield County area, That's not me. I'm not out there.
No, I'm glad that you said that because I definitely do think that, maybe not so much now, but in recent years, I think that New Haven was overlooked. It unfortunately gets dragged down by the stuff that drags down most big cities, right? And the reality is that it just has so much to offer, and I think that it's worth people giving it the time of day. So,
Oh no, for sure.
glad that you have the same perspective and opinion, and glad that you shared it with us.
Into Philly, New Orleans, and who's number one? Savannah. We coming for you. New Haven's coming.
Look, you broke my table, bro. All right, yeah, I'm a little bit scared, but all right. So, even if you have something more to add, I'm going to cut it there because I'm a little bit afraid now for how we can continue. But no, I'm
I
only
gotta
kidding.
get to a show.
Anything else?
My investors might kill me if I'm late. But no, other than
that's
that, love it.
All right. Well, awesome, man. Thanks so much for hopping on again, and we'll hope to see you again very soon.
For sure.
All right. Take care, guys. Thank you.